Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to Project Fav. I'm Sharon, intuitive empath, and more, as we're finding out. Light worker, energy healer, different modalities going on here as I learn the absolute truth of who I am and start operating in my gifts. More of them are revealed to me. More truth is revealed to me as I start stepping out into the existing truth. And today we're going to mix it up and try something a little different. Now, I've been kind of promising you guys for the past couple of months that in addition to the tarot, which is why Project Fab is tarot and more, we were going to expound on some spiritual concepts like what was I saying? Frequency, energy, vibration, and how everything in spirituality and everything in physics and everything in mathematics and pretty much everything in the universe boils down to frequency, energy, and vibration, particularly when we're talking about interactions with ourselves and with each other, the relationship or connectivity that we have with ourselves and with each other, and the different concepts in our current paradigm that we believe are helpful or beneficial. And in all truth and actuality, when you break down the science of it, they're not as beneficial in the way that we've been practicing, which is why it's important to open the dialogue to include multiple modalities and different thoughts on the process and different thoughts from different realms of knowledge and understanding, not just from a spiritual landscape, but opening up that landscape to include astrology, astronomy, mathematics, physics, quantum citations, and quantum theory, and including a lot of these different type of knowledge-based understandings, because relatively speaking, when you talk about multidimensional aspects of science, the universe, space, and ourselves, you can't explain it with one modality. We're multi-complex, okay? Multifaceted, and it is complex. There's complexity there, which is very nurturing. It's very nourishing. So in order to understand ourselves fully and be exposed fully to our truths, we have to kind of understand that each person is going to specialize in a part of that knowledge base, because they've really accelerated their studies by focusing on that. And I haven't necessarily mastered any particular realm of that, but taken little pieces from each of the constructs, tried to understand them as best I could, interviewing the people who do understand them, having them break those terms down into the simplest possible explanations because they understand them so well, and then kind of collaborate a lesson for us to all understand. So one of the questions that has been broached, people reach out to me in emails and I've talked about aura or the spectrum of someone's aura. And then aura is a topic of conversation that comes up a lot when we talk about spirituality, spiritual practice, energy, exchange, transference, and things like that. So I thought, let's break down today what it is and why it's important to understand what it is, how it works, and how we are affected by it. Okay? So let's talk today, my sebbies, my spiritually enlightened beings, your ma sebbies, about your aura, okay? So essentially the way that I would put it is it's your personal spiritual atmosphere, okay? It is the climate, the ambiance, the mood, the tone, the intensity, the resonance, the depth of the frequency and the energy that you emanate into your environment, your immediate environment, from your internal environment to your immediate environment, and extending beyond through space and all space-time. Emanation is an abstract but perceptible thing that issues or originates from a source. Okay, so if we talk about where our aura originates from, or what the source of our emanation is, and why it's so important to understand waves and fields, frequencies, energies, and photons and light and things like that will go into the science of spirit. Okay, and I think that I'm going to end up calling this whole program the science of spirit. So your aura is like your spiritual motorhome. Okay, wherever you go, it goes, and it's affected by your motion, your choices. It's affected by your mood. It's affected by the emotions that are triggered from interaction with other people's aura fields. Okay, all of that energy moving throughout the universe is very chaotic, although you have a lot more to do with your experience and perception in that than you think you do, or you might not be aware that you can affect that. And that's why I'm developing this program to help people understand spiritually what it is that they're doing, so you can have, in a very broken down, methodical way, a better understanding of what all of these people are talking about when they're talking about downloads, and they're talking about light work, and they're talking about twin flames, and they're talking about energies, and they're talking about chakras. Okay, so let's break it all down and really get nitty gritty with how all of these things are interconnected in the universe from you as the source. So scientifically, your spiritual motorhome or your aura is actually referred to as an electromagnetic field. Okay, and electromagnetism is the interaction of electrical currents or fields and magnetic fields. So electric and magnetic are actually two different things, but they have a relationship with each other that we'll talk about here and dive into a little more depth about, and really kind of reveal what it is, where it originates from, and why it's important to maintain a healthy aura around you. Okay, so fundamentally in physics, electromagnetism is a force. It's a type of physical interaction between electrically charged particles and the magnetic resonance that they generate. Okay, and we're going to talk about how that happens and talk a little bit more about why and uncover how that relates to you spiritually. Okay, so the electric aspect is the charge attracting or repelling, or the exertional force on other charges in the field. Okay, so we think of these charges in terms of polarity, negative and positive, electrons and protons, and when they act like particles, they're more like photons in a light beam. Okay, and I'm going really fast, that's okay. Just understand the principal concept right now is that they're the charged particles attracting or repelling on the exertional force of other charges in the field. So it's about connectivity and attraction and repulsion, attraction and repulsion. So that's the electrical aspect of it. Okay, the magnetic aspect is generated by motion or movement of these electrical charges in relationship or connection to each other. And that generates and emanates energy, which we refer to as electromagnetic energy. So electromagnetic energy is a form of energy that's reflected or emitted from objects, including the human body, in the form of electrical and magnetic waves that can travel through space. Now, the human body as a generator, for example, brain waves and nerve impulses are examples of the electrical currents that are moving throughout our body as we use autonomic and automatic reflexes and parts of our different nervous system. But what we're going to focus on for the sake and point of spirituality has a lot more to do with the part of our body that generates the greatest amount of electrical magnetic force, or the electromagnetic field that's generated, is actually our heart. It's our heart space. So if you think about your heart space and you think about the pillar of your chakra system, the heart ends up being the originating source of the electromagnetic field that's generated around you. Okay, so when we start talking about electromagnetic energy or the electromagnetic field, it's important to understand, and we'll break this down in subsequent lessons. Okay, my goal is to keep these lessons quick and short so that we have time to kind of kind of like either talk about them and create a dialogue in the comments or in emails so that we understand the concepts fully and principally before moving on. But also to allow us time for those who are just starting to step into spiritual awakening, spiritual awareness, and into your gifts and activation, and don't really know who you are, what this is all about yet. This is definitely for you. This is like Science of Spirit 101, okay? Now, I understand for you guys that are more advanced, this is going to be basic knowledge and understanding, but I'm really breaking it down in the simplest of terms to try to help people understand what's going on with them as they awaken and become more aware of what's happening to them as an experience. Okay, so we talk about our electromagnetic field. It's important to bring up concepts like quality, quantity, intensity, frequency, wavelength, resonance, terms like that, okay? Talk about that internal environment, the climate of that environment, whether it's warm or cool, okay? And when we talk about warm or cool energies, we're talking about high versus low frequency vibrational energies. Okay, so we talk about depth of waves, peaked wavelengths, and the space in between the peaks. Okay, so we measure the wavelengths by the peaks and then the space in between them. How much space, how much time, how much space-time is actually traveling in between the peaks in a particular amount of time or space, measurably, okay? So when we talk about quality and we talk about quantity, we talk about intensity and frequency, these are terms that are rather important regarding the spiritual experience that you're having, because these types of concepts actually permeate into your perception, your personal perception, and we'll get into how that all plays out over the course of time, okay? This is just going to, like I said, quick lesson here to just kind of introduce you to your aura and why your electromagnetic field is important. So when we start talking about those later on in the lessons, we'll kind of open your eyes to why your internal and external climates are important, why mood and tone and emanation is important, and interaction with other energies is important to you, and what your personal spiritual experience is going to be. Happiness, sadness, depression, anxiety, all of those are blanket concepts to kind of talk about your perception and experience spiritually. And we're going to explain how you can actually maintain a bit more, I don't want to use the word control, but less resistance to those types of flows through you and around you. What to do with them, actually, what to do with those energies, how to transmute them, how to transmit them, and how to use energy to your benefit. Okay? How to generate energy and use your own generated energy to your benefit as a conduit. Oh, wait, what? What did I say? Instead of investing that energy into other people, other places, other things, grounding yourself in a low frequency vibrational energy and then functioning at a high frequency, you can do both. Did you know you can oscillate between the two? We're going to talk about that. So, all of those concepts, quality, quantity, intensity, frequency, the wavelength, okay, depth, size, shape, low versus high, or including high frequency vibrations, and the energy that they generate are all contributing, or they all contribute collectively in forming a spectrum from low to high, short waves, peaked waves, slow moving or rapid moving waves, and is known as the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so the range of wavelengths or frequencies over which electromagnetic radiation extends is that spectrum. You've got low, and we won't go into what the hertz are and all of that kind of stuff, but the spiritual experience of low vibrational energies versus high vibrational energies. And you would think, because we live in a paradigm where duality still exists in our definitional paradigm of spirituality, okay, and external locus of responsibility is still in existence, okay, these are going to be eventually evolved out of the paradigm as you'll see, these will move away from duality because it doesn't really exist. It's polarity, and duality really kind of contributes to this thought process that there's an external locus of responsibility for everything, and there isn't. Okay, so polarity is about creating the connectivity and relationship of you and everything in space-time awareness in the universe, and how you relate to everyone else around you and how others are allowed to relate to you. And remember, I said allowed because you have a choice. Okay, so empowering yourself to utilize your electromagnetic field as kind of like I don't want to call it like a force field, but I mean, you can decide, you can choose what energies remain in that field and what emanates there or from it. Okay, and we can talk about that too, futuristic lessons. We're going to get into that. But why vibing high all the time isn't as beneficial as we think. Okay, so right now we're in a paradigm where twin flames is a big deal. Having a flame is a big deal. Being a light worker is a trend. Okay, not necessarily confined to spiritual selection. Okay, as a true authentic identity, and why it's important to know if you are or if you aren't. Pretending to be one isn't going to work, and we'll talk about that as well. Pretending to be a twin flame or have a twin flame, also not going to work, you guys. I'm not trying to trigger anybody, and I'm not trying to tell anybody that they are or they aren't, but in the grand scheme of things, it's all going to be revealed because the truth only exists in the light. And that is a scientific principle. When we talk about light energy, photon energy, and we talk about breaking all of this down to the atomic level, only the true authentic self is authenticated in this aura, okay? Anything illusionary or created by the illusionary identity will not resonate with other people as we grow in our authenticity with one another. Okay, so that is the nature of what's happening with twin flame paradigm right now, is that it's bringing to the forefront the mirroring, which is why we're moving away from duality, because duality is an older concept, and older is not necessarily, but it's a less evolved concept, and we're stepping up into this evolution of polarity and understanding the relationship within ourselves and redefining things, and not in terms of good, bad, evil, or light and dark forces, or necessarily anything about the separation of those two, but actually the singularity, the non-dual principle that exists in all of that, in you and in me, in you. Okay, so why vibing high all the time isn't as beneficial as we think. So a lot of people strive to stay high vibration. Okay, this is not necessarily a scientific principle that is going to render an optimal spiritual experience. And let me go into the science of that. Okay, so high frequency electromagnetic spectrum waves actually behave more like particles and less like waves. Okay, so photon light is more spontaneous, less predictable. The wavelengths are shorter, they're taller, they move more rapidly, they generate more energy, and they pick up more noise. Okay, so like you're talking about static electricity, frictive energy, other types of radiation, and other types of energy that's generated from high frequency modalities. Okay, so the bonds between the waves can actually be easily weakened or even broken, and that is sometimes the point of high frequency vibration and high frequency electromagnetic waves that are produced or generated. There's lots of space from the part of the peak. Okay, so when you talk about the actual wave, there's not as much space in between the peaks, but there's a lot of space in between the lowest and highest parts of the wave. So there's lots of opportunity for noise, what we call noise, to get in there. Okay, and that can actually weaken the bond, or it can actually cause I don't think it's called a covalent. I'll have to look up the term. I'm sorry, you guys. It's escaping me right now. But it actually causes other things to interfere. Interference. That's what I'm looking for. It's interference. So there's no regular arrangement of this because it's behaving more like particles. So it can be less stable. It can feel less stable. There's more opportunity for friction to develop as a result of static electricity, and that creates imbalance or interference in the electromagnetic relationship. Remember, the relationship exists electric and magnetic, and the electric is the charge, and the magnetic is the relationship of the motion of the charged particles. So you get push-pull from the magnetic, and you get an attraction-repulsion from the charge. Okay, so that's real basic, but that's exactly what it is. So spiritually, your experience may be exhilaration, excitement, spontaneity, creativity, a warm feeling, like this person's really warm and inviting. A lot of interest is generated there. People are interested in that, interested in you when you vibe high. You're more interesting as a person. It's a high attraction energy, okay? It's also intense and lends itself to a more extroverted type of communication style. It's productive, so you can feel very productive, like you're getting a lot done, okay? Now, when this energy is working in balance with a grounding force as well as low vibrational energy, this is a great vibrational frequency because it is so productive. So when there is a plan and there's a target, this is the high vibrational frequency energy that allows you to enjoy the space in between the slower frequency of energy. Okay, so this is actually more fun. It's actually more happy, this type of energy. So people think they need to vibe at this energy all the time. Not true. You don't have to vibe at that energy, at high energy all the time. Now, the problem with this getting out of balance is that it burns through resources, generates frictive energy, and can actually cause breaks in the wavelength chain, okay? So while that sometimes as a destructive force can be inviting because there are certain things that you don't want to remain in the bond, sometimes it can be a destructive force for things that you do want in the bond. And it doesn't offer a lot of time for self-reflection, spiritual reflection, introspection, okay, intuition, okay, fact-finding, those types of things, information, knowledge, and wisdom. Okay, so running the gamut with the high vibrational energy experience is great to an extent, but when it gets out of balance, that's when you can start to perceive your spiritual experience as negative. Okay, these people are reactive. High vibrational frequencies that build up over time can be very reactive. Nuclear reactors are actually high vibrational frequency energies. So it's important to understand that if you don't want to be a time bomb in everybody's life, then high vibe frequency activity isn't the goal, and probably shouldn't be. It's important to have that infinite resonance. Okay, remember that the infinite symbol is about moving collectively with the waves, non-resistance, okay? Cycling through the energies, high and low, learning how to move with the flow of that rather than creating resistance points, okay? And we're going to go through that as well. So as more energy is generated through increased activity, the likelihood of bonds remaining intact are actually less. It creates noise. This is why it becomes increasingly so in the realm of manifesting, okay, because we're going to talk about manifesting. Energy plays a significant role in manifesting, and why standards in energy production and understanding how you generate and utilize energy that you produce, that you generate, is part of the manifesting process. So high vibrating energy all the time makes it more challenging to remain present and focused as inertia and momentum gain intensity prior to a breakthrough, and more why things tend to break down rather than having the breakthrough when there's only high vibe energy. Okay, so the words that we used before were quantity, frequency, some receptivity, creativity, happiness, social productivity, communication, exciting, extroverted. Those are all spiritual experiences, social experiences, energetic experiences that you'll have at a high vibrational frequency of energy. It feels good, right? We love vibing high. It's a buzz. Caffeine, coffee, sometimes when alcohol first hits your system. Zzz, okay? So let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, and of course this is high, super high, and low, super low, or extremely low, extremely high frequencies in the spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum, which we defined before. But all are important in the spectrum because low frequencies are slow moving, they're held closely together, they're more stable, and they're more predictable. They move like waves in patterns and have a relatively smooth flow. They're less vulnerable to outside interference or external energy charges, noise, okay? They're more reliable. They're more penetrating. So what I learned about low frequency wavelengths is that they can actually, some of them can actually travel through water, and they use them for communication in submarines. Okay, so that is a more penetrating energy than the high vibe frequencies. And they can move through intense friction and maintain the strength in the wavelength bonds. Okay, so they can still remain stable. And when I say stable, I want you to think of it as not unmoving, but rather that they stay in the same configuration, moving rhythmically with the same pattern, resonating at the same sound and frequency, and creating the same vibrational energy, despite the interference, okay, despite the noise, despite the other energies that come through into that field. Okay, so the reason why it's important to oscillate between the high and low frequencies, low frequency, it offers and allows time and space for introspection. You can experience this as loyalty between two people. It allows for rest and recuperation, rejuvenation, and healing. Intimacy is created in the low vibrational frequencies. Your sacral chakras and your lower chakras are actually lower vibrational frequencies, and that's where physical intimacy and sometimes emotional intimacy is created in a relationship, in the connectivity spiritually experienced and perceived between two human individuals, right? So vibing high is really productive in one sense, but low vibrational frequency is also productive, although may seem counterintuitive, which is sometimes why it's important to poll the audience, find out what there is to know, and not just take somebody's word for it in a blind leap of faith, but look for that evidence, you guys. Leap of faith is an essential part of every spiritual process, sometimes without completely understanding every little detail before you act. You do have to kind of put things in motion, like taking step one, the first step, putting things in motion. And why is putting things in motion so important when we talk about our aura and electromagnetic field? Is because the absorbed energy causes one or more of the electrons to change their locale, so they move. Okay, so the absorbed energy in one of the electrons, so the buildup of energy over time, right, causes that electron, when it comes into contact with the other charged particles around it, it causes it to move. It either moves away or it moves towards. Okay, and as it moves away or moves towards, that is when things start to change. Okay, It produces, okay, so the absorbed energy causes one or more electrons to change their locale or move, producing oscillating electrical and magnetic fields, okay, or waves. Let's start with waves. So the electrical wave is created or generated when movement of that particle takes place. And the opposing force of that is the magnetism. So you've got the oscillating. They go back and forth and change places. That's what oscillating really means physically. They change places and remain in balance with each other throughout the wavelength spectrum. Now, when the electron returns to its original position, note to self, this is why maintaining or retaining balance, okay, going back to the original position, that's when the electromagnetic wave is produced. That's when it's generated. That's when the energy initiation takes place. And we can talk about 0 point. We can talk about action potential. When we're talking about nerve impulses, we'll get into all of that and how that is also part of the energistic flow of the human body, and why your aura and your external internal environment and how that interacts with each other is also a part of your spiritual health. Okay, so initiating the frequency and wavelength energies. So when we go back to electromagnetic energy, how is that produced, generated? So you are actually a generator. You're a generator, you generate energy. And that emanates into your electromagnetic field first. So waves and fields. So how does a wave become a field? So you have a single wave. How does that become a field? Okay, the relationship of the field around you is repetition of the wave consistently over time. So whatever you have repeating as that cyclic pattern, coming back to center, coming back to balance, coming back to the original position, that is what eventually becomes your field. Okay? So you are walking around in your spiritual aura field, your motorhome, all the time. You are always affected by it. Okay? So what you emanate or allow to exist, persist, or resist in your field is what becomes your perceived reality. Why that is a spiritual experience? Because perception is the difference between experiencing happiness and fulfillment and experiencing sadness and depression. Experiencing abundance and experiencing a lack of abundance attitude or a lack mentality. Okay? It's your perception of these as a result of your energetic wave formation and your field that affects your eventual and perpetual reality, okay? Because we get into perpetual motion generated from a source, okay? And we talk about, then we start talking about quantums and quantum mechanics. Okay, so these are spiritual concepts. They really are, you guys. So maintaining balance in motion of low and high frequencies from the spectrum generates the most high quality stabilized electromagnetic resonant wavelength and charges your aura with a signature frequency that's authentic to you. So you cannot hide your internal experience from your external environment. This is why I say your authentic truth is on display in your energy field that surrounds you and goes with you everywhere. Okay, so the difference between awake and aware is you start to become aware that all of this stuff is emanating and interacting in your environment with everyone else's stuff that's emanating and interacting with your stuff. Okay, so as you become more awake and more aware, you realize that the only person that's really responsible for the field that's around you and the perception that you're experiencing as a result of that energy that's produced is you. In a twin flame paradigm, it's not your partner, it's you. Okay, so when we talk about twin flames and we talk about torn souls and we talk about karmic retribution and we talk about soul contracts and we talk about eternity and we talk about spiritual concepts like that, when we break it down, you can see how complicated it's about to get in here, which is why we're going to break this down into little pieces, talking about each concept simply and in the most evolved modality possible. And that might mean we may need to break the conditioning, the bonds of conditioning that exist in your percepted reality, in your current perpetual motion field, okay? Because it all generates from inside. So what you believe is what you perceive. And that's from your underworld, which is your subconscious, to your external psyche. Okay, all of that plays a role in mind, body, spirit, and why the relationship between all of those is not just linear, but multidimensional. Okay, we get into all of that. We start talking about spiritual concepts and principles beyond that. Okay, and we're not talking about one 36-minute video. You can't break it down like that, peeps. You can't. You gotta break it down a little piece at a time. So, the frequency, so your authentic frequency, okay, because we got that to your signature frequency, authentic to you, which is why you can't hide anything. So your authentic frequency, the vibrations it generates, and the energy it emanates is what others experience as you. Even if you or they aren't in awareness or aren't awakened, okay? That is your aura. Yeah, you guys made it. And so did I. So that was my very first Project Fev Spiritual Lesson 101, your aura. Okay, so so we're going to talk about conditioning, the aura. We're going to talk about waves and fields. We're going to break those down. We're going to talk about the dangers of duality and the concept that needs to evolve away from duality, how we should move the modality of duality into singularity and non-duality, electromagnetic interactions, transmitting, transferring, transmuting energies in and out of your aura field, mastering your own energy, mastering energy balance, healing modalities, evolution constructs, and into the grand scheme and the great beyond. Not really into like the divination stuff, but so to get away or move away from, not necessarily because I want to like stop using the cards, but tarot's not for everybody, but spiritual enlightenment should be. And you know, to make the concepts that you're experiencing and helping you bridge the connections between your perceived experiences and the things that you can actually be aware of in a linear way without any multidimensional observations, can kind of connect the dots for you guys, and hopefully will get you all resonating at a higher vibration as your natural set point. Okay, because that's another thing too, is moving multidimensionally. Vibing high for one person might be 30 hertz. Vibing high for somebody else might be 100, and that might be their new set point, their evolutionary set point, because they've learned how to master their energy. So sadness is something they don't experience as often, okay? And why the concepts of spirituality that are written about in ancient texts as mastery come down to love and patience and kindness, self-love, self-acceptance, truth. One way, one truth, one light, okay? We talk about the scientific principles of the oneness, which is singularity and not duality. There is no external locus of responsibility for what you're experiencing in your immediate field, okay? So I hope that helps to enlighten some of you guys and bring some awareness into frequency, energy, and vibration, and why this channel is in existence. why I've decided to step out in these gifts and what these gifts are and how that's going to actually end up becoming part of what Project Feb is all about, you guys. Not just tarot and more, ... fill in the blank, spirit, universe. And I think eventually we'll also, what I see kind of coming in futuristically here too, is a little daily dose, a little shot of something. Sometimes it'll probably be pulling a card and talking about the collective energy. Sometimes it'll just be a chit chat over coffee, yo. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you all for being here. All of my wonderful subscribers. You guys make me so excited. Oh my God. I'm like, look at all of the people who are awakening and you know, growing in interest and learning about themselves and each other. And oh man, I love it. I just love it. I love to see you guys here. So thanks for being here. As always, yeah, okay, housekeeping. Thank you, Spirit. Housekeeping. Like the video, that helps it circulate and that helps it get out to as many people as possible. Like, subscribe to the channel, that helps the channel circulate. And that way we can all help each other resonate at a higher frequency together, collectively ascending and evolving together. Nobody left behind, okay? And then share the video. Share it on social media, circulate it around so that other people can learn about what Spirit says about your aura and the lessons that are coming from Spirit in the future, you guys, okay? All right, thanks for tuning in. As always, namaste.